Welcome back, everyone. We will now start up with item number 11, and thank you hugely to our climate change team who have waited. We were hoping to get to you before the lunch break. Sorry to keep you waiting over the lunch break, but we're all yours now and we're refreshed and positive. So
Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Perrin tako inoa. I'm Perrin Rafi Thompson from Chief Sustainability Office. I've got Dr. Sarah Anderson and John Morrow, Chief Sustainability Officer, sitting with me here as well. Sarah and I will take you to a series of slides. We intend to give you a progress report of how we've gone with Auckland Climate Action Plan so far, and also talk about the symposium that is coming up late March 2019 now. And Sarah will take you through the symposium and what it means for us. This is quite timely, as you might have heard the news on COP24. The messages are quite stark on that. David Attenborough said that time's running out, and we need to be, people want decision makers to take action now. And climate change has been framed as a matter of life and death. So it's great that we're actually working on this, and we're planning of doing our part in terms of climate change mitigation and also getting ready for the impacts of climate change. Okay, great. So just a quick review. We started doing this work in February, got direction from you on working on Low Carbon Auckland, updating the Low Carbon Auckland Action Plan and adding climate resilience to it as an integrated approach. We have workshops and also ask for your input in July and September to this plan. Also, we worked with you to endorse the 1.5 degree target for Auckland, which is quite an aggressive target. And this plan, the plan we're working on, is going to be complying with that 1.5. So what is Auckland Climate Action Plan? Auckland's Climate Action Plan will set a path to rapidly reduce greenhouse gas emissions to keep within 1.5 degrees of warming, while ensuring Auckland is prepared for the impacts of climate change. So this means that all the actions we are working for this plan will have benefits for adaptation and also climate change mitigation, reducing emissions. But on top of that, we want to work with actions that will bring multiple benefits to Auckland and Aucklanders. They would have health, equity, environment, economical benefits as well. In addition, key focus area is to partner with Mana Whenua and for Maturanga and Kaupapa Maori underpin the plan. Where does it sit, this plan? This plan will be delivering multiple outcomes within Auckland Plan and is well connected, linked to other plans and strategies such as what you just heard before, water strategy and also sediment as well. And we're working closely with the guys just presented to you to make sure we all link together. The diagram that you see on the screen, it's quite complex. It kind of talks about how much engagement we've done since February 2018. We started the left-hand side of the diagram. We started as broadly as possible to gather insights from different stakeholders. We've gone to all the local boards now. We've had youth, a series of youth engagement workshops. We've been to all the advisory panels, most of them. We've had workshops with Environment Committee, with yourselves. We've been to Kaitiaki Forum 3 times, and also held one hui with Mana Whenua, and we intend to do more. Kaitiaki Forum has also commissioned a consultant, independent consultant, to develop a position paper on climate change, which will inform the plan. We have partnership with government, central government. We understand it's key to align with government to ensure the success of this plan. And also a mayoral appointed independent advisory group, which will check and challenge us along the way as we develop the plan. We've got a working group across council and DHBs as well they do the same and also inform of what other plans are happening across council family as well. Where we are with the plan, I won't go through all the step-by-step of it, is Auckland Climate Symposium just a step before that. There are key emerging focus areas that are coming out after all the discussions we've had, which Sarah will take you over those ones later on in the presentation. It's a series of pictures to show the engagement we've done, and we've made it quite collaborative with different stakeholders. We've got local boards, we've been to local boards twice now. We've got reports coming out of that. We've got also, we're one of the signatories to Climate Leaders Coalition, which represents 50% of New Zealand emissions. These businesses are representing 50% of New Zealand emissions and 22% of New Zealand GDP. And having businesses signing up to this to try to reduce the emissions, it's a key driver for us to align with them as well. They're on board, they want to work with us on climate plan. Another point I'd like to raise is Climate AKL is a website, is a crowdsourcing idea website, which is open to public. We want to hear from everyone on their ideas, and we take those into consideration. So more pictures of engagement. And along the way, as we've been gathering insights, we've gathered evidence as well. We've commissioned a consultant, Arab, to do some emissions modeling for us. And we wanted to find out what levers we need to pull to be able to get to net zero emissions by 2050. And we do need to do further analysis on this, but the initial analysis shows a diagram in front of you. I just want to apologize for what the diagram you see in the paper is slightly different from what you see on the screen. It's the sector that is, one sector is missing from the diagram you have, which it's the industrial processes and product use. Stationary energy, if you start from the top, stationary energy is one of the key areas, contributors to our emissions. Within that sits our buildings and also the energy that is used in industry to make products, basically. It's called process heat. So Auckland's got a lot of industry sitting in it, so we need to think about how process heat affects Auckland as well. Then we have transport. Not surprising, is a large part of Auckland's emission. And then we've got industrial processes and product use. The reduction only happens through interventions that are technology driven or advances that then we need to bring from across the board to New Zealand, and also take up innovation and fuel switching. And also incentives for businesses to take on those on board as well. The remaining emissions, you see the gray area, it's about our carbon sinks. How do we maximize the potential of our carbon sinks? We're talking about blue and green forestry and also our marine environment as well.
So the other side of the coin, obviously we talked about mitigation a little bit there. The other side of the coin is around climate resilience and how we adapt to the impacts that we know are already going to occur within the system. I wasn't planning on going into detail on this because committee have already seen this information and we took it to a workshop. In fact, I think it was the first workshop that we did with committee. We commissioned NIWA along with our CCO partners and DHBs as well to give us an indication of what climate projections may look like into the future up to 2110, looking at both business as usual with regards to emissions and also a path that more aligns with a 1.5 trajectory as well. So what we've been doing since presenting these to committee is our research and evaluation unit here at Council, REMU, is taking this information and interrogating it in much greater detail for Auckland, looking at what does it mean for our terrestrial environment, our marine environment, social vulnerability, heat, sea level rise, and basically going into a lot more detail. And that report we should have early next year or mid next year. So where all of this information has led to so far, we've had a huge amount of engagement, as you've heard from Parin, and a lot of desktop research, including international best practice through C40 cities. And what that's provided us with is a series of what we've been told a plan must have within it when thinking about our people, our places, our region and our economy. And apologies, this is very small text, but we will share it with you all. So from all of that work so far, we tested those must-haves and also a long list of actions that we'd identified through subject matter expert workshops. And these were held over 4 days with sectors represented across private, public and voluntary sector. For example, in energy, we had Vector, Mercury, Transpower were all there. With transport, Kiwi Rail, Auckland Transport, construction, Fletcher and Downer. So a broad representation of not just council, family and DHBs, but also broader businesses and community groups were there as well. So from all of that work, and again, also with testing with our independent advisory group and our working group, we've reached a number of focus areas that cut across these different sectors in order to deliver the outcomes on the right-hand side. So I won't dwell on these focus areas. They're in the paper, and we're hoping to workshop these with committee in February, and we actually do have a date in now, where we'd like to unpack this further with committee and also the actions that underpin these. But there are 12 main focus areas that are emerging, and as you can see, they cut across all of the different sectors that we've identified. So the next step in the process is around the Climate Symposium. So why do we feel a Climate Symposium is the next step in our process? It basically expands on all of the momentum we've gathered so far, particularly around cross-sector collaboration, and interest is continuing to build as well, and engagement for the climate plan development. It's also always having that view on implementation. As we know, Auckland Council doesn't hold all of the levers to deliver this plan. We need to establish strong partnerships and have them on board from now, and that will also form part of the symposium as well. It also builds broader public engagement and raises awareness on climate change. So what will the symposium look like? We're looking at a 3-day event with participants and leaders from across public, private and voluntary sector. There'll be speakers, experts in their field, as well as panel events, a leaders forum building on the Climate Leaders Coalition that we are signatories for, and also a series of sprint sessions where we're going to dig more deeply into a number of topics. And those topics have been identified due to their level of impact on a broader focus area, the fact that they represent areas that need partnership and collaboration, their opportunities to scale. We know there are programs already in place that we can build from, and also there's extensive public and stakeholder interest. And I should also say, identifying these topics for the symposium, we've worked with the feedback from the SME workshops, our working group, and a number of others. During these sessions, we will develop potential actions and test those across the multiple outcomes we've spoken about before. It will also provide a platform for partner announcements, and co-funding has already been secured from central government and from other partners as well. So just to touch on the topics that are being proposed for the symposium. Oh, hand over to Farron at this point.
So there are 7 topics that are we would like to take to the symposium. The first one is a climate innovation and skills hub. And we've put the focus areas, the areas that actually relate to as well. So you can see it touches on different areas. This is about innovation in a sense. And we talked about technology before. Without technology, we won't be able, and innovation, we won't be able to achieve the 2050 target. So what is this? We've looked around, and this happened in Europe and Australia before. It's called Climate Kick. And Climate Kick has already worked for other countries, and we think that it might actually work for New Zealand as well. It's about bringing different partners from cross sectors together. We're talking about academia, businesses, private and public, and including government, to develop innovative solutions to the issues we've got in New Zealand. And it's about knowing what's out there in terms of technology. There's some innovations already there. How do we make sure that we can actually bring it to New Zealand and apply it in New Zealand as well? For example, we had a primary industry workshop, and one of the issues was there is technology to reduce emissions, but it's too expensive to actually apply it in New Zealand. How do we do that here? So we want to take this to symposium to bring partners together to understand what it takes to actually have a similar initiative in New Zealand. This is also around just transition and is about skills to prepare us for the future. The second one is called Regional Blue and Green Networks. What that means is there is already working going on across council and others that we develop coherent networks across the region. But that wouldn't truly happen if we're not working with, it is only happening across public land. How do we do this across public and private coherently? We need to work with our partners, and it has to happen across with partnerships across different sectors. The number C is decentralized and local energy solutions for the region. So why do we pick that one? I know a lot of us, we think about energies renewable. New Zealand's doing pretty well. But I think one thing we need to probably investigate more is that north and south energy mix is quite different. So South Island is 100% renewable energy, but north isn't. And it varies depending on peak time and what time of the day. It varies between 65% to 85% renewable. And also, we need to understand what this means specifically for Auckland. What we know is that we're not resilient in terms of energy. Everything comes from outside Auckland. And also, if we're not as clean as we thought, this would be quite a good area to actually focus on to understand how we can better enable localized renewable energy generation in Auckland.
And the remaining topic areas are community resilience to inundation. As the committee knows, there's a huge amount of work on community resilience when looking at the work of Auckland's emergency management, healthy waters. This one specifically will look at inundation, mainly due to public interest in this and also knowing that that work is already happening across council and how do we draw it together and work in partnership. The next one is the fossil fuel-free resilient central city, again building on momentum that already exists when thinking about fossil fuel-free streets commitment, city centre master plan and access for everyone. And then the next one is around a circular construction sector. Circular economy is still a concept that isn't particularly well known, so having some tangible examples where momentum already exists is the feeling behind this sector, and also one that was identified across our stakeholders. Other areas, as you've heard earlier, water is obviously a huge issue and circular economic principles play in there as well, so that will also be happening. And other sectors related to soil, for example, and plastics as well, we know are priorities. The next topic isn't a sprint session in that it wouldn't be completing templates and information the way the others would. This is more about ensuring that all of those other key topics embed Mātauranga Māori in how they develop their actions throughout the whole process. So next steps. Briefing Council Group ELTs is happening tomorrow, although they have been involved in the journey so far. We'll be establishing stakeholder teams for the topic area development at the symposium and also for those focus areas we spoke about. We'll be briefing those in advance of the symposium to ensure that they have all of the information they need to be able to work through to implementation as we go through those 3 days. We're having Environment and Community Committee workshops, as I spoke about, to drill more into those focus areas in a lot more depth and the actions that sit underneath those. The symposium would happen in March, from which we'll collate all input and draft the plan from March to May, with a draft plan to yourselves for input and adoption in June, and public consultation from then on. That's it from us.
Okay, fairly clear. I've got
Very clear.
a couple of questions, Councillor Newman and Councillor Ward.
Thank you very much. So just in terms of the hierarchy of the levers, so we've got the statutory levers like the Resource Management Act. If I understand it, then the RMA requires the action on the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, National Policy Statements, National Environmental Standards. At our level at Council, we've got the RPS provisions of the Unitary Plan, and our CCOs have their asset management plans. Where would this Auckland Climate Action Plan sit in that hierarchy?
As the plan develops, there'll be information threading through it and actions that thread through it, which may go on then to inform unitary plan and other aspects as well. As we said, it feeds in, it delivers on a number of the outcomes across the Auckland plan as well. And so it's one of the key levers for delivery of Auckland plan.
Are you envisaging that what you were trying to do here would be to inform a future change to the unitary plan?
I don't think we could actually say that at this point. That's what we want to be able to unpack as we go forward onto the focus areas. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's ruled out either at this stage.
And just one of the comments that I think you made, you talked about that part of achieving this requires incentives for business. Could you elaborate on what you meant by that?
Sorry, repeat that again.
You referred to in terms of implementation requires incentives for business.
Yep.
What did you mean by that? Can you give me
Meant
some...
was for businesses to make a change or take up new technologies, it costs them upfront investment. And sometimes they don't see they don't see the long-term benefit for that. So they need to be incentivized to be able to take up the new technologies.
Who is the provider of the incentive for the businesses?
Could be government, could be, I think it's mostly government really.
Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, got a few questions. The first one is around the political role of council as it goes to climate action. And in particular, I'm referring to our role in respect of lobbying, our participation in ICLEI, our participation through that in the COP process, because cities are actually involved with that and they're sitting around the table as part of that process. So I just want to put that on the table because I think it's important for the public to know that there's actually a larger process that we're involved with that embraces a number of other cities. Yeah. So my question around that is, can we incorporate that into what we're putting out? The other question I've got just goes to the climate kick process. That's been around for a few years now. There are a number of cities that are participating in that. So we've got a real opportunity to partner with some of those cities. Some of them are in C40, some of them aren't. They're in ICLEI. Are we actively engaging with other cities around that?
Yes, we've started a conversation on that. And we've got people in Auckland that actually started doing that. So we're going to bring them on board, partners in Auckland. So we're going to be working with them. And they have started conversation outside. I think one of the conversations was how could we work with Australia Climate Kick and
sure.
Yeah, look at Down Under together.
Okay, and the other question I've got just goes around implementation, because we've had a low carbon plan before. This is another variation around that. There's a significant degree of urgency around this particular issue. It's more urgent than just about anything else. So as far as the symposium is concerned and what we're doing, are we really focusing as much as we can around implementation, around collaboration, around stuff that we can get happening quickly?
Yes, the symposium is very much about ensuring it's the right people in the room who can make decisions and actually dig into the implementation. So on an earlier slide, I pulled up some of the levers that we're unpacking during that symposium, and that's around policy, what's the evidence need, what's the finance, what's the partnership and governance. And during that 3-day symposium, we'll be digging in very deeply into those areas so that we can really hit the ground running afterwards.
And the last question I've got, Madam Chair, that goes to process. Given that Auckland's taking somewhat of a lead role in this as a city, are we developing a template and looking to collaborate with other cities and municipalities across New Zealand, because we should all be doing it?
Yes, absolutely. And we're working with LGNZ as well, and very keen to collaborate with other cities.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'm actually happy to move these if you're happy to second. Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm mindful of the words of David Attenborough, listening to him on Morning Report. I think it's commendable. I am strongly in favour of giving you support for this, but I'd still like to know more of the detail, and particularly in and around the funding side of things. You're talking about the cost of the symposium being covered by existing budgets. from existing agreement for co-funding with central government and from potential sponsors. So really, I'm just wanting to just unpackage what our role is and what the funds are. I mean, we are the hosts, presumably, for this. And I think that's great in a reputational sense that we are providing that leadership. But I would like for you to give me a bit of a breakdown on what that might be and from which budgets we're going to, because there's a forgotten opportunity for perhaps some other project or something. And I'm hot on the fact that we often let Wellington off the hook. So I'd actually like to know what you're doing in terms of securing those funds and the quantum of those funds from Wellington.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair, so it's a work in progress, just to be honest. So we have secured funding from central government from MFE to the tune of about $20,000 to contribute. We don't anticipate this is we're thinking about utility here. So really this is a part of our process, and it is an opportunity as a platform and as a way to kind of engage with the wider community. But functionally, what we need is a space that delivers a 3-day sprint through these workshops. It takes the right people and gets the right outcomes from that engagement. And we've done this before. So what we like to do is be quite nimble and efficient in terms of funding. So we had a great agreement for partnership with Hatchbox in Grid KL. That was free for us. And so therefore we've already booked those facilities for a lot of the second part of the symposium, and we'll be using that. So that defrays a huge amount of the potential cost of renting a facility. We have started conversations with the private sector for sponsorship of side events and just kind of collaboration, but we're quite keen to keep that away from the main bulk of the funding for potential optical reasons. So something tangible that they could, a side event for a lunch or something at the end, whatever it might be. So I think there's a couple of these in train. I think the main point is that this is mostly staff time. We successfully facilitated within our team these outcomes through the subject matter expert workshops we did a couple months ago, to the general overwhelming satisfaction of all the participants. So again, instead of hiring a group to come in and do the facilitation, we'll be doing that ourselves. Of course, it's staff resourcing because it's council time, but it is probably the most efficient way of doing that.
So you'll keep us posted formally on that side of things, because I mean I really welcome this, but I know that not everybody will, and I'd just like to be able to forewarned is forearmed.
Absolutely, happy to do that.
Very sensible question, Councillor Fletcher, and to that end we've asked the staff to come back to the February meeting to give us a chance for a progress report prior to the symposium in March, so that we can unpack a little bit of that a bit more. Member Brown.
Thank you. I'm wanting to just pick up an earlier comment around other regions, and I accept the answer around local government interaction on a national scale, but south of us and north of us arguably are a farming region comparably to Auckland as a region being a people's region. So I'm keen to sort of just keep a watch on the failure potential of not reaching target, and then how it's measured internally, say domestically here. How did Auckland perform comparably to Waikato or Northland? Yeah. And then globally, how did we perform, say, in comparison to what seems to be never-ending fires coming out of Australia? And I can't see in a global sense how we're exempt from any heat that they're providing in the natural sense, because we're just over the ditch. So I'm keen to understand, like not today, but in the symposium or later, where are the firewalls, and then how are they measured, and then how do we receive the results, and then. Although we all know about climate change, what very few know about is what happens if we don't reach the target. What happens? Does the mayor lose his job? Does the Māori board get disbanded?
Almost certainly.
So what happens? I mean,
both of the above.
And I think maybe if some energy went into what happens, all right, and not this fuzzy stuff, but internally, what happens to us? What are the things that we're really going to be measured by. Because if it's just a wet bus ticket, then I'm keen to know that in 2019. Kia ora.
I'm interested to know that too. Now, it's been moved and seconded. I am just conscious we've still got 7 items to go. We are going to have another go at this in February. Councillor Darby, I'll make you the last speaker.
Yeah, probably just acknowledging the work and what happens. Well, actually, ultimately, it's the collapse of civilization. If you had a marauding army on your border just about to invade, you'd really pull out the stops, wouldn't you? Your nation would pull out the stops, and every man, woman on deck. I don't get the sense that we're every man, woman on deck staring down the possible collapse of civilization. Now, I acknowledge the staff. This is not negating your work. But I don't get a sense when I open a report, I don't get the section before local board input and before public input and even before the Māori impact statement, the climate change statement. I think we need to start steering at that on just about everything we do. Because this is Edinburgh, and there's something else happening in Poland at the moment. This is the possible collapse of civilization. We're not treating it like it's a marauding army on our border, and we need to. So what's going to change within this organisation? It's a bit like the sediment. You know, we've had reports galore about sediment. Climate change we didn't find out about it yesterday. The longer we delay on doing the most basic things, the more likely it is that it will be the collapse of civilization. So I guess I'm supportive of these moves, but I would like, with some greater urgency, to see what we're actually going to do that's fundamentally changed. Because I still see a fossil fuel reliant Auckland. Yep. And just little, in some ways, gimmicky things. Even this response to a fossil-free streets city centre is in a way gimmicky because it's such a small part of the city. It's important, but I'm desperately wanting to see how we're going to treat with our business on a daily basis through a climate change lens, every day.
Every decision.
Yeah. I could not agree more, Councillor. That way we would have no more greenfield development, we would not have the large motorway developments that we've got down south, and we wouldn't be wussing out of changing our entire fleet to electric vehicles, and we would speed up even more our public transport. Those decisions get made time and time and time again around the council table with an eye to climate change, but that eye is often closed. So I could not agree with you more strongly, and I'm hoping out of this will come what I've been asking for, is that does this make the dial go in that direction towards dealing with and mitigating and avoiding climate change, or does it go the other way? And that should be a gate through which we do not move. If it makes it worse, we don't do it. Now, I've not seen us act or have that discussion that way. This might help us along that path, and with your support, I think we should go there. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you, and thank you to the team most warmly for this work. We move on